And there's a couple things that you can add to the dessert if you want spice wise. So if you have those and you want to get them out, you can also add a little bit of nutmeg. You can add a little bit of ground cloves, or if you have like a pumpkin pie spice mix, you can add those as well. So again, just flavor wise, but if you want to keep it simple, just the cinnamon. And then as far as what you'll need, on the stovetop, you'll need like one skillet pan to do the mushrooms in. Okay. Yeah. Oh, no. Or you need some sort of other flat pan to do the tortillas so that you can fry your little tortillas. And then like a small saucepan for the dessert with a lid. And you'll want a lid for the skillet as well, just because it's the fry pan is, you don't want olive oil all over your stove. So then you'll just need, a couple things as far as like something spoon wise for the dessert and something to mix up the mushrooms with.
Amanda?
Yeah.
I'm super quick. So if we're substituting something for mushrooms, I took your advice on zucchini. Will we be cooking that as well?
Yes. So you're going to cook it exactly the same. The only thing that might be a little different for you is it might cook faster. But yeah, you'll be cooking it the same with the spices and everything. You also need a pair of tongs. These are really good for the slaw and for the salad when you're mixing. And then a cutting board and a big knife to chop up all your veggies. And then I have 2 bowls out. So you'll want a smaller bowl for the slaw that you're going to put on top of the tacos. And then a big bowl. And I like to have room for the kale avocado salad because you're going to want to actually get in there and mix it with your hands. It's just the best way to do it, even though it's messy, but it's kind of fun. And if you have kids, it's really fun for them. Just make sure their hands are nice and clean. And then the only other thing is if you have a citrus juicer, it just helps with keeping the seeds out. If you don't have a citrus juicer, then I just recommend when we do the salad, just squeezing the lemons into like a side bowl so you can scoop out the seeds easier. I'm going to pause for a second because that was a lot. Does anybody have any questions? No? All right. Well, then I will just keep going. So we're going to start by preparing the tacos, the part that's going to be cooked. So if you haven't already, make sure you've washed all your mushrooms. And if you have any sort of like chili or spicy pepper that you're going to add in, wash those as well. I'm going to see if I can get this lower so you can see me. Hold on.
Amanda, I'm sorry. I do have one more question.
Sure.
So on the zucchini, because it is a little bit different,
yes.
Do I want to excuse me, do I want to peel it? And then how should I chop it up?
So I would not peel it because one, the skin is really nutrient dense. And 2, I think it helps it not just completely fall apart when you're doing like a recipe like this. You'll chop it about the same size as I'm going to chop these, which, okay. And really that's based on like what texture you want. So if you want it really finely chopped, like it's like pulled pork kind of like really falling apart, then do it finely. I would maybe keep it a little bit thicker with the zucchini because again, it'll cook faster and it might kind of fall apart. But like just cut it, like lengthwise into like little strips. And you'll see how I'm going to do the mushrooms. But don't get too worried about it because however you chop it, it's going to be fine. So again, based off like the texture you prefer, if you want it really finely chopped, do it more fine. And if you want it chunkier, then do it chunkier. All right. So, all right. Can everyone see that? Okay. All right, cool. So I'm just going to start by getting all of the mushrooms cut up. With these guys, it's kind of easier if you pull off the stems and then you can cut the stems separate since those are easier to chop lengthwise. And again, you're just gonna wanna think sort of the texture of like shredded meat. So like with the heads, I just like to slice them like this first, and then I slice them again the other way. And they'll kind of naturally pull apart, but you just want them in nice little strips. So sort of like this. And chopping veggies is definitely one of those things you just kind of have to experiment with. And the more you get used to doing that specific veggie, the more you figure out how you like it best. And I was going to tell you guys, so some of the ingredients I picked in this, I did specifically because, I mean, they're good overall for your health, but they also, some of them have ingredients that are really good for fighting cancer specifically. So mushrooms are a really interesting newer area of research that they're looking into. And all sorts of different mushrooms have different properties. So mushrooms have been used medicinally in traditional versions of medicine forever. But now we're kind of going back and figuring out like what compounds are healthy and why they have the benefits that they do. And mushrooms have been specifically linked to fighting cancer. They have some anti-tumor properties. So one type of mushroom that's really cool, but I have not actually found anywhere, like I think you would have to order it, is reishi mushrooms. But those have been kind of the highlight of that research. So if anyone's interested in that, I could send around after the class some information on that. And there are websites where you could order like dried mushrooms that then you can rehydrate in soups and stews and broths. If anybody likes making pho, you can make a really great plant-based pho using mushrooms instead of meat, and like a veggie broth. So just some ideas there. And then also on these tacos, we're going to end up garnishing with cilantro and with lime. And the lime, citrus fruits in general, which if you notice, I have multiple, I'm using limes, and then we also use lemons in the salad. Citrus fruit has really good cancer fighting properties. And it's also really high in vitamin C, which is just good for your immune system overall, good for fighting illness, good for your energy. And then cilantro has been linked to all sorts of health properties. It reduces overall mortality, and then specifically it helps reduce the risk of obesity, diabetes, heart disease. It's been linked to weight loss. And it also promotes your energy. So a really big thing, especially if you're going through treatment, right, is kind of fighting the fatigue. So it's one of those foods. And as a leafy green, right, it's a herb, but it's a leafy green. It's best to be consumed raw. You can also cook with it, but it is best to be consumed raw. You just get a higher amount of the phytochemicals, which are those positive plant nutrients that really flood your cells with all the healthy things. And then on top of that, when you're eating fresh, both the kale and the cilantro, when you're eating fresh greens, you're getting a much higher amount of the natural water in those plant-based foods, which just helps with hydration, which is another key thing as far as keeping your health up, fighting disease, and being able to eliminate toxins in the body, which again is really key, especially when you're going through treatment or when you're recovering from treatment. So just some things to keep in mind. And feel free at any point, if you guys have questions, to either jump in, or you can, I'll try to keep an eye on the chat too. if you don't feel comfortable, you know, just speaking, but please jump in at any time. I do want to throw out just a question to the group. What do you guys like as far as spices? Like, what did you guys pick to put on your tacos? Does anybody have favorites or certain spices that they chose?
I don't really have a favorite, but I just want some red chili. So I'm just gonna put red chili sauce on mine.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. I like all kinds of spicy foods. I mean, what normally I do. Well, now I do. So it was very sad when I couldn't eat spicy food.
I am sort of experiencing that with this pregnancy. So I'm
Yeah.
had my limited options there.
And my daughter Samara, she doesn't like any spice. So
Oh, hello. Yeah, I have my 5-year-old he likes some, but it just depends. And as far as like red and green chili, he's not really okay with that.
Grandma taught me how to cut, so I'm helping my mama.
That is awesome. I think it is best to cook with the family when you can.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Amanda. This is Jeannie. Hi, Samara. So I have like a chipotle spice.
Okay.
And I have fresh green chili that I chopped up.
Oh, perfect. That sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Chipotle is really good too. I've also seen this done with like sort of like the curry and cumin spices, and that gives it an interesting like twist as well. I think in that case though, I just wouldn't maybe use the lime. I'm not sure that would go so well. But all right, so if everyone's getting their mushrooms chopped, I'm gonna go ahead and move these into my strainer. And then the next thing, if you're ready to move on, will be the onion. So like I said, this is a giant one, so I'm gonna use about half of it. But if you have a smaller one, I would use the whole. And just kind of, you know, cut off the ends. Make sure you get the peel off that outer layer. And this is another one that you can, depending on how much you like onions. So like some people, if you like it, but only in small amounts, then you can really finely chop it. Or if you want to keep it as like bigger strips in there for the texture and you like that, you know, getting a bite of a slice of onion, then you can do that as well. I would just recommend getting it at least close to the size of the mushrooms, or if you're using the squash and zucchini, close to the size of that. That's why I really like these big chef's knives too, because it makes it just a lot easier with veggies when you're dicing. Whoops. Uh-oh.
So, Alex, welcome. I saw you just jumped on. Just wanted to bring you current. We're currently chopping our mushrooms for alternative vegetable and onions for the tacos.
Thank you, Jeannie. Thank you, Allison. But yeah, as I was saying, with the big chef's knife, it's just kind of nice because you can kind of seesaw it over and get everything nice and chopped. So I don't necessarily know everyone in the group. Are most of you, like, are you pretty comfortable cooking at home? Do you cook often?
Hi, this is Annie. I will answer that question. I don't like to cook.
Fair enough.
it's not my favorite thing, but I do like the thought of new recipes that are easy and clean
Uh-huh.
that I can do with my girls. I do like that.
Well, thank you for that. Yeah, I think that's always a good motivator is kids, because even on the days I really don't feel like cooking, my son's like, "Mom."
Right,
Yeah. And then it does,
right. You have to
it-
feed them.
exactly, yeah. And it does make it more fun, I think, when you can have someone helping and someone to talk to while you're doing it.
Yeah.
Also at this point, if you want to chop up your green chili or your whatever like hot pepper or chili spice that you have, if it's a fresh form, then just go ahead and really finely chop that.
And I didn't mean to say easy as in, you know, this, I know you took effort in planning this menu. So please, I didn't mean it like that at all. I just meant,
No, I think that's a positive thing. I want it to be easy.
okay.
I
I didn't
want
mean it like you didn't put any effort into this, because obviously you did, and this is a great menu. I just meant, I'm not good at cooking, so anything I can do, I consider easy. And
Totally get that.
if I can teach my girls, that's even better for me, because I'm just not good at it.
And I think it's a good mentality to try to approach easy, simple things, you know, like one thing I struggle with is I start cooking and I want to add in 12 ingredients. And then I'm like halfway through and I'm exhausted from chopping. So that's one thing where like sometimes having a recipe where I keep it to the minimum and I only have, you know, 4 or 5 key ingredients, it helps it so that you don't kind of burn out in the process of trying to get the meal done.
Right. And the least amount of stuff I have to measure is better for everyone.
And I am not a big measurer. So as you will see, I do it based off of kind of how I feel and how I like, if I like the flavor, I'm going to add more of it.
Right.
So,
Right. And if I can't find the measurement in the cups or the spoons that I have, I just assume it doesn't exist. And then I just make up my own stuff.
there you go. Yeah. That is why I love cooking. I am not as big of a baker because you have to be a little more precise there.
Right.
So again, you should have at this point, you should have your mushrooms, your onions, and if you have like a fresh chili to put in there or some kind of chili pepper, you're gonna put this all into your skillet or your fry pan now. So, but go ahead and take a minute if you're still finishing up, no rush.
Is this are we oiling the skillet or just putting it without oil right now?
Yes, we're gonna put oil. That's why I was bringing it over so I could show you as I
Oh,
do
okay, I was like, well,
it. But good question. All right. So yeah, I use olive oil. You can also do coconut oil. You can also do avocado oil. Those are kind of the ones I prefer just because health-wise, those are the ones that I've read the most positive things about. I will say there are still a lot of experts that really think minimizing oil overall is the best. But that being said, there's also a ton of research that olive oil is really healthy for you. Same with coconut oil, same with avocado oil. So it just kind of depends on who you want to listen to. And I go back to, if I'm making an overall fresh meal and I want to use a little bit of avocado oil, then I'm going to do it. I'm not going to make it harder than it needs to be to feed myself fresh food. So, but yeah, so just a couple tablespoons. Again, I'm not a big measurer, so I'm just going to show you. I do about that. So that you have a little bit in the bottom there. And then you're just going to throw all of your mushrooms, your onion, and if you have any chili, like I said, you're going to throw all of that in there. And get it nice and mixed up. And then you're going to put it on your burner at about medium heat. gonna see if I can bring you guys with me here. It's a new world with Zoom here.
Yeah.
But, all right, and then now is when you're gonna wanna get any of the spices that you wanna put on there. So, I'm gonna head bring mine over. Like I said, I have some roasted garlic here. You can measure this if you want. If you're going to measure, then I would say like at least a tablespoon of everything. I am somebody who prefers more spices rather than less. Also, most spices have really good health benefits to them, so it doesn't hurt to put more in, as long as you're not going to make it to the point that you don't want to eat it. So again, I just kind of do like a dusting over the whole pan. And then I just do each spice that way. But I would say like 1 to 3 tablespoons if you're wanting to measure, just depending on your preference for each spice. And like, if you're someone who's really sensitive, put less, you know? And then this is the adobo spice mix that I was talking about. If you're not familiar with it, I'll just read you what's in it. It has sea salt, garlic, onion, black pepper, oregano, bay leaf, and turmeric. And this is a great spice for me. Like this flavor profile, I can put on anything. I can put on any stir fry, any sort of like taco, any sort of stew. I put it in pasta sauces. So I really like that mix. I also have my taco blend.
I'm sorry, can you tell us again what that mix was called?
Yeah, it's called adobo. It's ADOBO. Let me see if you can, I don't know if you can see that.
Adobo. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And most stores have it in the bulk section.
Okay.
And then I also have that fajita mix from the bulk section. So I'm gonna add a little bit of that. And then I have my garlic herb grinder, which this one has garlic, onion, lime peel, red bell pepper, rosemary, and basil. So I'm just gonna top that off. Once you have all your spices, go ahead and do one more drizzle of the olive oil, kind of over the pan, so that it has enough to saute in. And then give everything a good toss. Mix it all in there. So when you're cooking something like this, where you're sauteing it with oil, you can kind of decide if you want to, like, as it starts to saute down and it might start to get dry on the pan, you can either choose to add a little bit of oil when you need to, or you can add a little bit of water if you're trying to watch your oil intake. With the water though, just make sure you don't overdo it. So just, like a tablespoon or 2 at a time, mix it in. And also just be mindful that it's going to make it spit. So again, have that lid handy so you don't end up getting burnt. All right. Sorry, my computer did something. Okay, there we go. We're back now. Everyone doing okay so far? Is anybody kind of like have questions, confused, needs a minute to catch up? You doing okay? All right.
Yeah, everything's going really well. I was also using the Bella mushrooms because I couldn't find the shiitake mushrooms at my store.
Yeah, the Bellas are much more easy to find.
Yeah.
And they work just as well. They work just as well. So, and I actually really like the flavors of them. All right. So if you've got that started, just remember to kind of keep an eye on it every so often so that it doesn't dry out. Just kind of keep stirring it occasionally so that it doesn't get stuck to the bottom of the pan. And if you notice it starts to dry out, like I said, you can either add a little bit of drizzle of oil, or you can add like a tablespoon or two of water, just kind of mix it in. But we're gonna let that cook for a while we're getting some other stuff ready. So the next thing we're gonna work on is the slaw. So you'll need your head of cabbage. You can use any kind of cabbage. I really like the purple cabbage. One, I think it's just really colorful and fun. And then two, I just like the flavor. I think it has a little bit more flavor, a little bit sweeter. Cabbage is one of those veggies that it's a cruciferous veggie, which I believe we talked about at my last meet. So cruciferous veggies, which kale is also one of that we're going to use in the salad, are one of the two groups that have shown the strongest as far as the cancer fighting elements. So they're really, really potent. They're really powerful for fighting disease in general. They're very nutrient dense. So it's kind of funny because cabbage is one of those, I feel like, extremely underappreciated veggies. But in other parts of the world, it's a huge staple. I mean, like boiled cabbage is huge in parts of Africa. When I was working with refugees, they literally eat it at like every other meal. And it's one of those veggies that even though it's kind of gone unnoticed for a long time or seen as like a, I don't know, like a side note, it's really healthy for you. So it specifically has a link to reducing breast cancer, and it's best if you can eat it raw or minimally cooked, just because then you're getting the most nutrients. Again, those phytochemicals, which are the plant chemicals that are really healthy, that have those disease fighting properties, they do tend to start to degrade as you heat them up. Also, they're really high in fiber, so it's really good for your digestion and your elimination system. So with these, if you want, you can wash them. Also, though, typically I just pull out the outer layer of it. And then you get to this like richer, silkier, smoother internal layer. And you're gonna want your small bowl for this. And then you'll also need your sea salt and your vinegar. If you want, you can add pepper to this as well. If you're a pepper addict and you like to put it on everything like I am. Let me put you down here. All right. So like I said, this cabbage tends to, like, you cut up a little bit and it gets really big. So you cut off the bottom here. And then this is already a half because this was a really big cabbage head. And I'm going to cut it in half again. And I'm only going to use about a quarter of it. And this is still going to make extra to what we'll actually need for the tacos we're eating today. But like I said, it's nice to keep in a bowl in the fridge, and then you can throw it on top of anything. And it just gives it kind of that that zesty, vinegary taste hit that is nice on top of different things like salads, tacos, burritos, even like stir fry. I really like it on top of, like, if you're making an Asian dish as well, like an Asian stir fry or a bed of rice with some kind of veggies on top. You can throw a little bit of this on there. So I'm just gonna slice it, and then I'm gonna kind of finely chop it. Again, you can cater this to how you prefer the texture. It's gonna go on top of, it's gonna go fresh on top of the mushrooms inside the tacos. So it gives you that like crunchy, really fresh, vinegary, kind of acidic taste that counterbalances the more savory flavor of the mushrooms. I like to leave it a little bit chunky, but some people prefer it really finely shredded. So just however much. And also, as we were just talking, right, if you're someone who cooking is not something you enjoy as much, make it easier on yourself. Don't worry about cutting it so fine. Just get it cut into chunks and call it a day. I always say make it easier on yourself when you can, especially when you're having a day where you aren't motivated to cook, but you're still trying to take care of yourself and eat a good meal. All right. And then you're just gonna put all of this into your bowl here. And you will need your set of tongs, or you can use like a spoon or something to mix it up. Tongs just kind of make it a little easier. Okay. And then as far as vinegar, if you're measuring, I would do about a 1/4 cup to a 1/2 cup, depending on kind of how much cabbage you have. You do want it to have enough to actually sit and soak in. Not like to the point that it's flooded, but you'll see how when I pour it in here, you just kind of pour it over. And you should see on the bottom there, you should see like at least about 1 inch of that vinegar in there, okay? And then you're gonna use your sea salt. Again, if you're measuring 1 to 2 tablespoons, which might, I would say 1 to 1.5, actually, I'm sorry, 2 might be a little much. And that does sound like a lot, but this is something that because you're mixing it with the vinegar and the salt, you're sort of doing a play on like, when you, so it's like similar to when you're making your own pickles or pickling any sort of fruits and veggies. It's sort of like a fast version of that, so you can make it fresh. But then if, like I said, if you let it sit in the fridge and even for like a week, it really kind of brings out that bold flavor. So I'm just gonna do a dusting over the top here. And then I'm gonna stir it all in with my tongs. So just make sure all that gets really evenly mixed in there. You might want to check on your mushrooms, make sure they're not burning. You can also, like I said, if you want to add in some cracked pepper, which I'm gonna grab off my table. You can add in some fresh pepper just to taste on here. And again, just mix that in evenly. All right, and then we're just gonna set this aside to let it kind of soak that up. If you want to periodically give it a little bit of a stir, just so that all of it gets to kind of soak in the vinegar. And then we're gonna go ahead and get ready to start on the dessert, because that also needs to cook, so. Okay. And I'll just go over again what you're gonna need for the dessert. So you'll need some sort of a small lidded saucepan. I do like to use, if you have like a safe non-stick one, just because sometimes the cinnamon and the honey gets kind of stuck. If you haven't already washed your apples, make sure you get those nice and clean. That's what we're gonna start with. We're gonna chop these up first because the apples take the longest to cook. So I'm gonna pause for a minute so I can put a couple things away and just leave it open. Does anybody have any questions at this point?
I have a question about the vinegar.
Sure.
What about like a white balsamic vinegar that has lemon in it? What-
Totally. Yep. It'll just add flavor. And balsamic is really good too. Like if it's a very strong flavor, but I really like it with the combo of the mushrooms. I would just like, if it's a really strong, if the infusion's really, really strong, you might want to not use the whole amount of that. You might want to use like half that and half like a plain white vinegar.
Got it.
But it's up to you. If you really like that vinegar flavor, go for it. Use the whole amount of that. Yeah, and if anybody is familiar with the New Mexico Olive Oil Company, they have some amazing infused vinegars that you can do all sorts of cool things with. All right. Let me check on my mushrooms one more time. So I'm gonna bring you over because this is what I mean, where it starts to kind of stick a little bit and we're losing the juice. So this is where I would throw in either a little bit of oil or a little bit of water. So I'm gonna add just a couple tablespoons of water in there so that it doesn't start to burn. You can also probably at this point, I mean, I can't see everyone's stoves, but if they're starting to get kind of darker in color and they've kind of scrunched down, you can turn it down to a lower setting, like a 1 or 2, like a low simmer. Especially if you're doing the zucchini and the squash, Allison. How's yours looking? Okay, that's still, yeah, that still looks good. And you have a good amount in there. So I think, yeah, you should be fine, but you could probably start to turn it down as it starts to get that kind of like golden brownish color, you know?
I have it on low actually, because my stove tends to run hot.
Okay, perfect, perfect. So that's why it looks great. Because I was like, at this time you're using that, it's probably getting close to close to the point where it's gonna start sticking. All right. So I'm gonna set you down so we can start on the apples. All right. And what I use as sort of my guideline for size on these is I try to make all the fruit a similar size. So like small chunks. And so like if you're using the canned mandarin oranges, think about how like, you know, the slice of a mandarin orange is about this big, right? So like that's about the size you're gonna want to cut your bananas. So you'll slice them. And then the apples, you might want to go just a little bit smaller because they'll cook a little faster. And the apples are the part that really kind of take time. Again, texture, total preference. So if you really like the crispiness and the crunchiness of a fresher, less cooked apple, then go ahead and leave them larger chunks. If you want them to be more soft and more like buttery, sort of like the inside of a apple pie, then do smaller pieces, if that makes sense.
Amanda,
Yeah.
should the apples be peeled or not peeled?
So again, I'm a big fan of leaving the peels on whenever possible because that is actually the most nutrient dense part of most fruits and vegetables. So I leave them on. If that is an aversion to you and you don't like that texture, then go ahead and peel them. But health-wise, it's better if you keep the peel on. So I'm just gonna quarter them and cut out the seeds so that we don't get any of those in there. I just want to do a check-in. Is everyone doing okay? Are we all in about the same step? Okay, I'm not hearing any concerns, so I'm gonna assume we're all doing all right.
So Amanda, as we cut the apples, should we place them in the pan or in a bowl?
You can put them directly in the pan once they're like cut into little chunks. Yeah. I'm gonna cut these much smaller, so but then yeah, they're gonna go directly into that little saucepan. And I tend to like mine a little bit softer and a little bit butterier. So like I said, I make mine a little smaller. But if you want to make them crispier, leave them in a little bit larger chunks. The other thing on this dessert, and all of the nutritionists in me is going to kick me for saying this, but it's so true, is that it's amazing with like vanilla bean ice cream and or some whipped cream on top. So I'm just going to throw that out there if you want to treat yourself. This also is like one of my son's favorite dishes. And he's funny because when I cook it, the color is not, I will say the color is not the most appealing, right? Because the cinnamon and the honey, it kind of makes it like a brownish. So he's always hesitant, but then once he starts eating it, he's like, oh my gosh, this is so good. So. So as far as this part of the meal and some of the health facts, apples have been shown to be linked to reducing the estrogen receptor negative form of breast cancer specifically. They have polyphenols, so those are really good to prevent inflammation, and they're just really good as far as fighting disease overall. I mean, the whole apple a day keeps the doctor away. We've heard it a million times, but it's a real thing. It is, apples are extremely healthy for you. And again, that skin on them is really what has the highest nutrient content. So if you can keep those on, I highly recommend it. It's funny, but a lot of times the colors in plant foods really give away where the nutrients are, right? So often like the inside of the apple is the more dull kind of bland, whereas the vibrant part is the external peel, and that's where the majority of those nutrients are. Also, sort of like when we talked at my last class, we were talking about how with whole grains, right, you keep that outer bran on grains. So like with brown rice, that brown part is the bran, and that's the most nutrient dense part. It's very similar with fruits and veggies and their peels. All right, and you might want to pause and check on your mushrooms. And at this point, you should be good. Like if it's starting to get little crispy parts, then I would turn it all the way down to low. So just kind of keep it so that it's going to stay warm, but it's not really like cooking too much more. Also, I would give your cabbage another toss just to kind of change up which ones are soaking on the bottom there. Make sure you get that flavor distributed. You can eat this dessert cold too, like if you end up with leftovers and you put it in the fridge. But I do think it tastes best if you warm it up a little. Another thing you can do is instead of if you have more time, you can bake this. So you can put it like in a dish in the oven and bake it for a longer period of time. And it just makes it a little more softer, gets the flavors a little more incorporated. But again, just time wise, this is kind of the fast version of it, and it still turns out really nice. So I'm gonna go ahead and bring you over here. So go ahead and get all your apples into that saucepan. And you're either gonna need your 1/4 cup of juice or the can of mandarin oranges. We're gonna go ahead and open those. And I like to take a jar, so like a separate like little jar or dish or something that you can pour out about half of the juice into, because you probably won't need it all. But you're gonna want to keep it on the side so that you can add a little bit here and there periodically. Again, just to keep it from like burning. So let's see here. Sorry guys, I'm trying to figure out where the best angle is. Okay. I know this is kind of in the way, but so I pour all the juice out, and then I'm gonna put about half of it, which should be about 1/8 of a cup, into the saucepan with the apples. And then I'm just gonna set that other half to the side. And you're also gonna dump in all of your mandarin oranges. And you can choose if you want to cut these in half to make them smaller, but I don't really feel like it's necessary, because these are they're, especially if they're the canned ones, they're gonna start to sort of fall apart into the sauce, which is good. You want that. So just go ahead and dump those in there. And then get your burner started at a medium again. And you're gonna mix up those apples and that oranges. Apples and oranges. And actually, depending, like I have a very small saucepan, like the base is pretty small, so it's very full. So I'm actually gonna move mine to like medium high just to get that cooking started. And then the next couple things you're gonna need are your honey and your cinnamon. And like I had mentioned earlier, if you want to add any like nutmeg or cloves or like the pumpkin spice mix that some people have in their cabinet, which has the cinnamon, ginger, nutmeg, allspice, it's all mixed, then you can add those as well. if you're wanting to measure, then I would do like 4 to 6 tablespoons of honey. Otherwise, you can just do a pretty good drizzle over the whole thing, like I'm going to show you. But it's also the flavor. Obviously, the more honey you add, the sweeter it's going to be. So when I'm making it for my son, I add a little bit more than when I'm making it for myself. And then again, get that nice and stirred in there. I had also said earlier, if you don't do honey, you can use agave nectar as well. You can also use brown sugar. I'm just not a huge fan of using straight sugar, but you can. Another substitute that is fairly healthy is maple syrup. So that's another thing that you could use, like either blackstrap molasses or maple syrup. They're all still sweeteners, so just be mindful, but we are making a dessert here. And then cinnamon, I would say like 2 tablespoons if you're measuring. And if not, then I just kind of do a dusting over the top there. And again, it's going to be to flavor. If you really like cinnamon, add more. If it's not the biggest cup of tea, then you may actually just completely forego it and use like the cloves and cardamom or nutmeg instead. I think it's pretty delicious, so I tend to be pretty liberal with it. You're just going to want to get all that nice and mixed in. And then put your lid on so that you keep that moisture in there. And we're going to go ahead and go back over and cut up the bananas and get those ready. So 2 bananas should be plenty. Like I said, the browning is actually really good for this recipe. And there's some more recent research. Again, I can send out links if you guys are interested, that ripe bananas with brown spots have TNF, which combats abnormal cells. So they've actually been shown to be really good in fighting cancer with the brown spots, which is just kind of an interesting fun fact. And then on top of that, with bananas, you know, you're getting a lot of potassium, which is really good when you're recovering. It's good when you're recovering from anything, exercise, treatment, illness. It just helps overall. So these, I'm just going to slice them. I do thinner slices. You can also cut them in half if you want them smaller. I just tend to do them like this. And again, these are going to kind of break down into like the saucy mixture that the dessert is going to have. The apples are really what stay like as the crunchy, crispy, chunky part. And then these and the mandarin oranges and the juice kind of create a sauce with the honey and the cinnamon. And you can use this as a filling, like if you're really into baking and you like making pies, or you like making what are those little like cupcakes that have the filling in them? I forget what they're called right now, but you can totally use this as a filling for that. And then you're just going to add these to that saucepan, and get it mixed in. Just check on your mushrooms, make sure they're not getting stuck. They shouldn't really be cooking at this point, but and I would also, again, toss up your cabbage. Allison, I do apologize. I think we are gonna go over time because we haven't done the salad yet. So if people need to bounce off, let me, that's totally fine. And then if not, hard to measure cooking sometimes as far as time.
And Rebecca, we're also recording this for the YouTube channel. So if somebody has to jump off, but they want to, come back another time and see what they missed, that will also be an option.
Okay, perfect. So the next thing we're gonna get ready to do is the last dish, which is the kale avocado salad. So you're gonna need a really big mixing bowl. And then your cutting board. And your knife again. And I hope everyone has washed their kale. So with the dino kale or the lacinato kale, the reason I like it for this is one, it's much like thicker, crispier, darker green. So I prefer this when I'm going to eat it fresh, whereas the other kale I prefer more for cooking, but really again, it's personal preference. Also, these are really nice to so you take it by the stem and you're basically going to hold on to it like this and strip it. So you're just going to pull that stem out. And you can actually save these for a couple things. One, if you have dogs, these are a really healthy dog treat. I just wouldn't overdo it because it's lots of fiber. And then two, you can also save them and saute them up similar to how you would asparagus, where you cut them maybe in half and then do a little bit of olive oil with some garlic and some spices and saute them up. And they're really good just kind of as their own. But for this salad, it's just better to have the smoother texture. So that's why I strip them like this. And you're gonna strip them and then you're still gonna chop them. So, because you'll strip them in they come out in a big strip like this, and then you'll still wanna chop them finer. Any questions or anything that anyone's having any issues with?
I don't know if I missed with the fruit, Amanda. Once it starts boiling, should we turn it down or keep it on the medium?
If it's starting to boil, I would turn it down a little bit lower. And if you need to, if it's starting to dry out, add a little bit of that juice. And I do like using a smaller saucepan for that because it helps kind of prevents you from losing too much of the juice in there. Like the smaller surface area on the bottom. But yeah, depending on your stove and depending on how big the saucepan is compared to how much fruit you have in there, you might need to adjust it. Just kind of check on it periodically and then give it a good stir so that bottom doesn't burn to the pan. And when you're chopping greens, if it's something that you're not used to doing, kind of a good trick of the trade is to do one all the way across and then do it, the opposite all the way across and then do some diagonals. So you're really getting it in all the different angles. And the bigger the knife for this, the better, because it's easier to kind of do that sway back and forth, And then once you get that all nice and chopped, you're going to put it into your really big mixing bowl. And you're going to need your lemons and your avocados handy next. And kale, again, like I had said, it's one of those cruciferous veggies. It's really good for fighting cancer. It also is just very high in vitamin K. It's very high in iron and protein for veggies. And per calorie, it's extremely high in iron and protein. So it's kind of nice because it's definitely a low calorie, high nutrient food. It's one of those superfoods for sure. Also high in vitamin C. I don't think I said that, so I apologize. So now with your avocados, if you have larger ones, you should be good with like 2 or 3. I have smaller ones, so you're just gonna cut them in half, and you can do this however you want. Like if you want to use a spoon to scoop it out, that works. I literally just kind of squeeze it out because you're gonna mash it up anyway. And if your hands are messy from other things, I would take a minute and go wash them off really good because we're gonna get our hands all up in here. Just make sure that you're not getting the little topper part or any of the skin of the avocado in there. But kind of squeezing it out like this actually helps so that it's already pre-mashed when I go to mix it in. You may just want to take a minute to check your fruit. Make sure you give it a good stir. Same with your mushrooms, if they're still like sizzling a little bit, maybe mix them in. Also in the salad, so we're gonna be adding the lemon, which is another citrus fruit, very high in vitamin C, really good for your heart. The other thing that's key about using citrus with leafy greens and with vegetables that have iron in them is that the citrus fruit actually helps your body be able to absorb the iron that's in the veggies. So it's really good to pair the two. It also flavor wise kind of helps round out any of the bitter notes in like the dark leafy green vegetables, which I also say taste bud wise, the healthier you eat and the more fresh vegetables you eat, the more your taste buds actually find those like what start off as bitter notes, they become sweeter over time. So it definitely is like a retraining of your taste buds as well. But again, the citrus, that's why, you know, lemon is very commonly put on all kinds of salads. It helps with the iron absorption, and then it also just helps round out those bitter notes, those really earthy tones. So get all of your avocado nice and pulled out of the peels there. And then the last thing we're gonna do is the lemon. So if you have your citrus juicer handy, go ahead and do that. If not, like I mentioned earlier, I would just recommend squeezing it into like a side dish so that you can pull out the seeds and not have to worry. But if you are someone who likes citrus and uses it frequently, a citrus juicer is pretty cheap and it's a great, like, just makes life easier. So just go ahead and pour that lemon juice right over the top of the avocado and the kale. And I'm going to use 2 whole lemons, but again, cater it to your preference. If you, I like a lot of lemon in mine. And sometimes I'll even like bring, like when I have leftovers and I bring it to work, I'll even bring like a slice of fresh lemon to add more on top. But it's up to you. You can also do lime or grapefruit juice if you prefer that flavor. You can definitely experiment with that. I know some people aren't as big of a fan of lemons, so those are two other options that you can do, or even orange. I mean, really just any citrus fruit that you enjoy. I also do want to note, because we're going to use our hands on this, and there is lemon juice in this. So if you have really sensitive skin, and I apologize for not saying this earlier, an idea is to use like either like latex, like the sterile gloves. Make sure you wash them off so that there's no like powder or anything like that. But you can use those if you don't want to get it like on your actual skin. Or you can even use like the tongs to kind of mix it in. It just takes a lot longer. So really the best way to do this is with your hands. Ooh, had one little seed get away. All right. And then once you have all that in your bowl, check your fruit one more time. If you need to turn down, go ahead and turn down the temperature if it's starting to dry out or get to where it looks like it's going to boil over. Sometimes too, depending on the juice. So I'm going to show you what I'm talking about here. Like mine actually has quite a bit of juice in it right now. So I'm actually going to leave it uncovered for a little bit to let it kind of get a little less soupy and a little thicker. So I'm going to leave it uncovered for a little bit. And again, that really just depends on like the ripeness of your bananas, how much juice you put in, and like how much water was in the oranges and apples as well. So also depends on your preference. Some people like it a little soupier with more juice. Some people, I like it when it's a little like creamier, more firm. So now it's called bruising the kale. That's what we're gonna do. So again, make sure your hands are nice and clean. And then you're literally just gonna get in there and mix it all together and kind of squish it in, like almost like you're kneading dough. You just really want to work out any of the clumps of the avocado. Make sure that all the kale gets fully covered with that avocado and that lemon juice mixture. And like I said, if you have small children, make sure their hands are really clean, but they absolutely love doing this part.
Okay, sorry, one more question for you because my daughter's here talking to me, so I don't want to miss anything. But were we supposed to add anything to the lemon juice?
No, it's just right now you should only have the lemon juice, the kale, and the avocado in here.
Perfect, thank you.
No problem. All right, and then it should be nice and mixed in. Go ahead and kind of try to salvage what you can off your fingers and go wash off. The other thing that the lemon helps with too is appearance wise, if you're going to make a big batch of this, as we all know, like if you make guacamole, right, the lemon helps it from browning. So that's the other thing. All right. If you did uncover your fruit, you may want to check on it. You may want to recover it. Give it another good stir. Mine's still a little soupy, so I'm going to leave it as is for now. The next thing on this, and this is going to be it for the salad, you're just going to give it a good salt and pepper if you want those. Also add in now if you were going to do the fresh garlic or the fresh ginger. Like I said, time wise, I'm not doing that today, but both of those are good. And then you're just gonna use your tongs to, I would give one more stir on the slaw here. Should be good to go. Rinse those tongs off so that you don't have the vinegar on them, or if you have a second set handy. And then go ahead and use that to mix in your salt and pepper. And then that's ready to be served. So I'm gonna go ahead and move this out of the way. Okay, and all that we have left, we have the limes and the cilantro. And then we need to fry up our tortillas and we are good to go. So I would just recommend like a little handful of the cilantro. I keep the stems. There's no need to waste the stems. You can chop them up really finely, but they have just as much nutrients as the leaves. And it's a lot to throw away. If you really don't like the texture, that's fine. But I always say like, it helps if you just really finely chop them. And this is what you're gonna have as the garnish on your tacos, is the cilantro and then the fresh squeezed lime. So. All right. And then I just like to cut my limes in like 6 slices and serve like 1 per taco. So there's that. And the very last thing we got to do is the tortillas. So if you have your corn or your flour tortillas, whatever you're using, flour too, you might not necessarily need to fry up. If you wanted to heat them like over the burner, you can totally. But with the corn, obviously you're gonna want to fry them up. You should have enough to make 2 to 3 tacos per person for 2 people if you follow the recipe exactly. So I'm gonna do 3 just because it's just me. But you're gonna come over here to your other flat pan. Let me just move this out of the way. Give your fruit another good stir. If you haven't covered it back up again, you might want to do that at this point to keep some of that juice in. And then you're going to use a little bit of oil. And again, you can use, I prefer the olive oil, but avocado oil is also really delicious flavor-wise with these tacos. You can also use coconut oil, but that is a more particular flavor. Not everybody likes that flavor with tacos. So you're just gonna do a little drizzle, kind of let it get all over the pan there. And just get them started on like medium heat again. And depending on if you grew up doing this, you might just use your fingers, or you might use a pair of tongs, or you might use a fork to flip them. I feel like being in New Mexico, a lot of people have probably made corn tortillas or fried up some corn tortillas before, but if you guys have specific questions, let me know. I'm trying to think if there's anything. Oh, I didn't really talk about the avocado. So I know we're done with the salad, but I am going to talk about that for a minute. Part of the reason that avocado is so good for you is I'm sure you've all heard about the healthy fats. So it does have healthy fats, but what those do are they help reduce inflammation, and they actually are linked to reducing your cholesterol as well. Again, some of the nutrients that you're getting when you're eating avocados, it has a high content of vitamin K, has folate, high content of vitamin C. It actually has more potassium than bananas, which is interesting because, you know, everyone's told to eat bananas for potassium. And then it also has B5, B6, and vitamin E in it. So all of those are really good. Again, just health promoting, help you fight illness, help keep your immune system up. And then the other thing, I don't think we talked about cinnamon either, did we? Not yet, okay. So that's the other thing that's in the dessert. And cinnamon is a really cool spice. It's linked to so many good things. It's really high in antioxidants. Again, it's really good for fighting inflammation. It's also specifically linked to reducing the growth of cancer cells. It's considered toxic to cancer cells. And then another thing is it's anti-diabetic. So it helps reduce your blood sugar. So it's really good to throw in, like, if you have high blood sugar, or if you're diagnosed with diabetes, one of the best things you can do is eat oatmeal with cinnamon in it, because both oatmeal and cinnamon help with balancing your blood sugar. And for if you're if you're hypoglycemic, which is actually what I am, where your blood sugar tends to dip, it can help kind of balance it throughout the day. So it's good to add just like a tablespoon to whatever, your cereal, your oatmeal, your yogurt, if you like that mix. That's not a flavor mix I'm fond of, but some people do that. Some people even put it in, like, if they make a smoothie in the morning, or you can put it in your desserts. All right, and I know we just hit 4:30, so we're almost done. But if anybody needs to jump off, thank you so much for coming. And yeah, I hope that you're able to watch the video later. But you should have most of the pieces by now, so now you just got to put it all together. I'm just going to open it up one more time. Did anybody have like any questions or any parts that they were unclear on or had issues with? Or just any comments?
My kitchen smells amazing. Thank you.
Good, good. I'm glad. You're doing something right.
Thank you. I like to cook, so this is fun.
Me too, and I'm actually glad this has been kind of a rough pregnancy for me, so I have not cooked nearly as much as I normally do. So I was glad that I had already agreed to do this, because it made me get in there and make myself a really good meal. So, so thank you guys.
My first one made me very nauseous, so I can't really.
Yeah, this has been very different from my first one. My first one was pretty easy, but this one, I am in my 3rd trimester and I'm still having lovely nausea and migraines. And
Oh, that's awesome. What are your thoughts on grapeseed oil? I mostly use olive oil, but like when I make popcorn and stuff or fry tortillas, I use grapeseed oil. Is that a good one recommended, or?
so I'll be honest, grapeseed oil is not one I'm as familiar with. So I would have to look into that, but I can
Okay.
definitely get back to you on that.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering if It was, good for like high temperature cooking. So I just started
I have-
using it for a long time, and I just didn't really think much about it.
Well, and I have heard that it's good for like, if you're gonna cook something at a really high flash point. But as far as the nutrients and the like nutritious value, I'm not sure. So I will.
That's what I was wondering about. Yeah, because it does cook nicely, but I try to use olive oil when I can.
Yeah. I just think that's definitely the one that time and time again, when we go back and forth on oils, like the three that keep coming up as pretty healthy are the avocado oil, the olive oil, and the coconut oil. And coconut oil is actually amazing for Alzheimer's and for memory. So like they even recommend putting like a tablespoon of it in your coffee if you're dealing with like early dementia or with Alzheimer's. And then just kind of again, a lot of people I'm sure are familiar with this, but after you pull them off, if you can fold them right away, because otherwise they start to dry and they don't like to stay folded, and kind of weight them down so you get your nice little taco shells there. And your dessert should be good. So I would go ahead and turn that off. If you're still wanting you can kind of check with a fork the texture of the apples. If you're still wanting them to cook down more, you can definitely leave it on like a slow burn while you're eating your tacos and your salad, and then you'll have your dessert after. But I do leave it covered and sitting on the stove so that those flavors just kind of stay mixing in there while we're eating the rest of the meal. So if everybody is about ready, I'm gonna go ahead and start building the tacos. So you're just gonna take a little bit of your mushrooms here, put that as your base. Get a nice amount in there. And again, even if you just use the minimum of those like 8 ounces, you should still have enough for like either 4 really hearty tacos or like 6 good tacos. All right. Then once you've got your mushrooms in there, we're gonna go over. Let me get you guys moved on over here. And then you're gonna add a little bit of your slaw here, like a good spoonful on top of each of those. And if you like that vinegar, get a little bit of the vinegar from the bottom, drizzle it over that. Then you're just gonna take a good big pinch of your cilantro. You can also, I know some people don't like cilantro, and I know certain people think it tastes like soap. So if that is not your thing, you can also totally substitute like parsley. You can substitute green onion. You can substitute really any like green herb that you want to do. Even like basil is really good on these, like sweet basil or Thai basil. You would just do the exact same thing, chop it up after you wash it off and then top it. And then you're gonna have your limes here to squeeze over the top. And if you wanted, you can cut up one more avocado to slice. I am a huge fan of avocado. And so I definitely like to add a slice to my tacos. Right. Then we're gonna bring over our salad. You'll have your side note there. I do like to serve with, like I said, I like to serve it with a slice of lemon so that if people want more lemon, they have it. And then salt and pepper, if you didn't already do that. But that's pretty much it. And then we just have our dessert that should be nice and ready. That you can serve either on the side with your meal, or you can serve, you know, after as your dessert here. And again, you do still want some of that juice in there, but if you want it to kind of thicken up, you can leave it simmering while you eat. So, any questions or any last minute thoughts?
I'm just so happy that avocado is so good for you. Like the one thing, because I mean, I love avocado. I can never have enough avocado, which is good news. Thank you for sharing that.
It's very good for you. It's
Thank
very
you.
good for your, the same as the positive healthy fats that are in olives and olive oil. It's the same there. So you're getting, it's good for your brain.